was a portfolio manager at the Bank of America, we had a large release because we typically had, every release was big at the Bank of America because they had over 50 plus integrated systems that would probably be impacted by any kind of a change. And they had a release management team whose job was to prevent large breakage in production. So it was like a battle every time as trying to push out new features and new software against this release management team who was to protect production. Their role. So it was a good battle to fight. And process-wise, we had to go through a lot of hoops at every stage of the game. You had to hit milestones along the release management trail to say our requirements are all signed off and documented and signed off by all possibly affected parties. Then development had to hit certain marks to stay in that release. Any time that you missed any of these milestones in a release, you could get kicked out. And they had a big integration testing phase. Very waterfall process, but at each stage of the thing, your project could get kicked out, which would ripple into other teams' software development, because they're, like I said, up to 50 on any given release. And I can't remember, they would hit a record, each increasing release as the complexity of business and integration with other systems got larger and larger. The number of lines of codes that were changed in each release grew and grew. So release management had a big job. And to do it, they asked you all kinds of questions to try and see if they had confidence in your team's ability to make it as part of that release. And so you'd have to dig up all kinds of stuff to prove it. And with phase change, you can see that you could, if there was a change, you could really document it well and provide them the data that they needed to make the decision to keep you in or out, and if it was safe to integrate with other systems. And
we can, in essence, say, I understand the change I made is only affected in this part of the code. Exactly. I know for sure.
Right.
Right.
And because before, without this information, they would assume that it could break anything.
Which they have to.
Right. So they'd make you test, gigantic regression tests of everything, that you didn't break any existing functionality. And so if you could isolate the change and prove to them that it was very isolated, then you could say, oh, you only touched this other system, so only you two have to integration test with each other, and it doesn't affect the other 48 that could possibly be changed. Yeah. So they have to always assume the worst case in the world before phase change technology.
Makes perfect sense. So,
actually, I have one thing to add to that. So one thing that we really didn't cover in that kind of process was, okay, we made this change and we've gone through all these hoops to say that it's isolated to right here. What we didn't look for is if that same, or didn't have any idea really, is that same logic, the flawed logic that we need to resolve.
Is it somewhere else?
Is it
replicated somewhere else?
How are you going to figure that out in a huge code base? Something that we're doing at phase change is we actually, because it's all in the software as database and it's all normalized, we have already processed what's the same. So we just know.
With our functional equivalence.
Yeah, with functional equivalence. So that, I've never seen anything like that even touched in the industry before.
Right.
Huge.
So again, from a, we make the release process more nimble. We don't need nearly as many people necessarily involved, and people obviously need to trust the software that it works in order to be able to do this. So there's a hoop you have to go through from that. But once they get over that hump, they could be more nimble from that standpoint. And what you're saying is we're really doing a much better job than humans would really be able to do on their own today, because we would understand all the relationships completely. And so if it's similar, the exact same as somewhere else in the code, we would know that.
Yeah.
Right from the hub. That's interesting.
Or if it's supposed to be the same and it's not, we could find very close, things, and then you can say it's supposed to be the same in multiple systems, yet this system implemented it differently than this one, and we need to get them together.
Yes.
Well, the other thing about this is it's not just how many people you have to get involved in these tasks, distracting them from this is unplanned work. right? So you've got all the people doing their planned work, and then you have to pull them into these meetings, unplanned work. So where does slippage come from? So there's that kind of thing. The other thing is, okay, the release management meeting is in 3 days. You have to wait to get all these people together to try to get all the information together. So how quickly you can respond as it gets bigger and bigger, you got to get calendars together and scheduling. But if the information's just right there, then you've got it right now, and whoever needs it has it right now. And it could just be 2 people saying, well, I checked this, yep, okay, sign it off. And so that's a cost that isn't, there's always all this push to keep projects on schedule. And there's the costs of the project are being tracked, but all these unplanned dependencies and people coming in and the distraction, that isn't tracked. So that gets lost somewhere in the budget. It's a huge amount of money.
The logistics nightmare, like you were saying about scheduling, and you have to allow enough time for people to get their information together. That would be really, we would shorten those cycle turnaround times a lot.
When if it's a production bug that's costing the company money until it's fixed, it's a big deal.
I was just thinking that even in the integration test cycle, when you're doing your testing, we could also help the teams find the bugs much more quickly. I mean, you can run the software all the time. It's always real time. So whatever state the software is in, it can inform us and help us track down bugs. So that would quicken those cycles on both, integration testing and regression testing and, anything QA.
Makes sense. Thanks.